Hello and welcome to another episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School. I'm your host, Charlie Mann of law firm Alchemy. I'm excited to have a different type of episode here. A buddy of mine, Patrick Wright from Texas, reached out to me, and he works with the ABA TechShow. And what he was looking for an opportunity to kind of spread the word of the tech show and some of the opportunities there. And I know some other folks who are involved with the event. It's always been one that, admittedly, from a distance, I need to actually go and show up in person myself, have always respected, because it is trying to bring technology, best practices, and push the future of law faster than maybe it would be pushed without an event like this happening. So I'm really excited to have two of the co-chairs of the event here, Cynthia Thomas and Sophia Lingos. And we're going to have, for the first time ever, a double answer to the question of what is one thing they don't teach you in law school. Sophia, let's start with you. What's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
Hi, Charlie. Thanks for having us. I'm also a law professor, and I will say strategic networking. Not only don't feel like I was educated how to do it in law school, but it's something that I hear from my students all the time. They hate that word networking. It gives them anxiety. I get this cringe look. They're like, oh, they tell us we need a network. What does that even mean? And it seems so overwhelming. I try to work with them and tell them, one, let's start with our existing network. You're overwhelmed in a room. Maybe that's not your place. Maybe that's not what you should be doing. Think about all of our different online opportunities. Get a buddy. There's a lot of different ways. But what is the point of actually doing this whole networking thing? Going into networking with a goal and making sure it's achieved, as opposed to just getting overwhelmed in a room full of attorneys, maybe having a little bit too much to eat and drink, and then walking out of there saying, not going to do this again. So strategic networking, not making networking a dirty word, and having the support really of people who've gone there and done it before you, so you can make the most of the opportunities, because people like to meet law students. You know, there's a lot of times, especially I joke my 2Ls, I'm like, this is when you do it. People don't feel like you're just out there with your hand out going, I need a job. Do it when you're a 2L, 3Ls, we know what you're looking for. But strategic networking, I think, is absolutely critical that we teach people how to do it right.
We are definitely going to come back to that. And let's go ahead and stack up, though, our second answer here. So, Cynthia, what's the one thing they don't teach you in law school?
I agree with that, what Sophia said with regards to critical networking. But also for me, it was finance. I mean, basics, like 101. I'm not saying going a deep dive with P&Ls and budgets and all that, but just the basic 101s. Because I don't know about you guys, but I have this general number in my head of what's in my bank account. So I never ever use the bank registers. I mean, they come with the checks. Now we don't even use checks, but at that time when I was in law school, it came with this little book, and I was supposed to write down, like, and add in like a deposit and add in fees. None of that. So if I wasn't doing that on a personal level, think about it when I started. Like, oh my gosh, now I'm supposed to have a separate account for my operating expenses. Oh, wait, the trust account. What is that? Like, I can barely understand a checking account. Now I have to learn about trust accounts. I mean, there was a savings, but no, there was not a savings account for the firm at that time, but it was just all the little basics, the day-to-day. I'm, like I said, not a deep dive, which I think is really a need, but definitely you need to hit on the basics, just the 101s. And for those who want to be a little bit more savvy, because they may just want to be going into a large practice, so they don't need to know all the nuances. But that basic 101 is just really helpful. And I think, honestly, it helps you in your day-to-day life as well, because there's so much you keep in your head, and I can't keep my personal account, my business account. What's in the IOTA account? Like, do they have money in trust?
That's right.
Things of that nature. So that's one thing I would really stress that law schools and law professors teach. Sophia, you're going to teach that class next year?
Well, I do have a couple of days that we cover finance, and I will say when we get to trust accounting and I teach them about reconciliations and IOTA, we get into it. I use that example. I'm like, like your check register, and everyone looks at me like,
exactly, especially now,
how
right?
do you know if you wrote a check and someone cashed it? And they kind of look like, we don't write checks. We Venmo.
Exactly.
Fair enough. I was excited when we finally got, check deposit on my phone and I didn't have to
Oh
go to the
yes.
bank anymore.
That I
That to
agree.
me was like the biggest thing. And my old office was actually above the bank. So I had to walk by it on my exit from the building, but I still used it. So,
Yeah,
but
no,
no,
that's
even
so
when I
true.
talk to them about different accounts, I'm like, well, they're line items. You don't open, 20 different accounts for every single client. And they're like, yeah, but this doesn't count. And I'm like, okay, no, we're going to
Yeah.
look at a spreadsheet. And then there's all the technology to manage it. I mean, being able to attach your QuickBooks and have your QuickBooks set up for your reconciliations and build that in your practice management software and have it all streamlined. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if we showed our students to give them that value add? I always tell them when we talk about technology, we talk about these things. You could be walking into a law firm and say, hey, no, it's not that I just need a job. Look what I just learned in law school that you wouldn't have learned in law school. And
Exactly,
here's how I
right?
can help your firm. I now know how to do these reconciliations with all these cool new tech tools that you've never even heard of. Here's what I've got for you that is not just, I just graduated, I need some money, I need a job. Teach me how to lawyer.
Well, so I'm curious then, for both of you, with this being able to teach strategic networking, teach finance, I don't know how hard it might be to get, say, a law school to move on that front, but what could law firm owners, as they're hiring new team members, potentially do in order to advance those skills of new attorneys?
If you look back at the big firm model, really, of now it's not as much of the 2 year associate training, it's more of a 1 year associate training, but it's always blown my
Mm,
mind how that all other firms didn't take on some sort of training model, especially within their own practice. Because we
mm.
graduate law school, it's crazy that we can practice any kind of law, right? I'm a transactional attorney. I can walk into court right now and represent someone. That's terrifying because I'm not even sure which courtroom I should be walking into, but I'm allowed to. They gave me a little card that says I'm allowed to do that. Whereas, if I'm a surgeon, thankfully, I could not operate on just an arm unless that's kind of what my trained area is going to be. So
Hmm.
I think if we could have more training programs, and maybe that's not something that law firms, we ask a lot of law firms. Do your marketing, do your business, because you can't have non law firm owners. But maybe this is a third party opportunity for someone to build more units where new associates or law students coming into being new associates can just be educated. The firm could kind of select what they want them educated in, so it's not their responsibility. But there needs to be a lot stronger education because I talk to my first and second year graduates all the time who are just terrible. Like, I don't want to ask and show that I don't know, but I don't know. I have no clue. How do I
Exactly.
get this information? So I think that there is a lot of opportunity. Telling students that in law school you take a whole semester to learn one thing and then you get out on the law and you take a couple hours CLE, and guess what? You now too are a family attorney. Is wild.
Exactly.
Cynthia, I'm curious about your perspective as well.
No, I agree. It was, I want to say back in the day, because that can be yesterday or 10 years ago, depending on who's looking at what days you're looking at. But I really believe that back in the day, a lot of the large law firms, they did have that. Oh, they did the summer associates, and then they had all the different programs to kind of like educate and teach some things, but it was never about like the actual practice of the day
Mm.
to day. It was about like, okay, you're gonna come in, you're gonna build a couple hours. Oh, it wasn't really a couple; it was like 1950. So, so by saying that, I just believe that they really need to. And one thing I know that we do here at the firm that I'm working with now, they do have that program. They have
Mm.
they call it a university, just modules and modules of whatever you want to learn. I think that's fabulous because it's all like self-paced, so you don't have to worry about like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to blow a client meeting, so to say, not blow, but so I can learn how to be able to network at the next event and get more clients and things of that nature. So I really think firms should just take the opportunity to work with a third-party provider if they can't do it in-house, if they're not large enough, to just set up some tutorials. I'm sure there's an AI app for that, that will tell you how to
Probably.
create a tutorial for to teach anything on network, for finance to client relations, and just give that value add to their employees. And I think that will create a better culture and
Mm.
longevity within the firm, and perhaps maybe keep a little retention going on in those firms and stop that revolving door.
Yeah. So going back to your original answer, Sophia, about strategic networking, I'm curious about two things there, both of your perspectives on one, the fear that lives behind the networking idea that you started to touch on that I think is really worth revisiting. And two, as long as we're talking tech show, I'd be interested in the role that technology can potentially play in networking. So I'll throw that over to you, Sophia, and then Cynthia, I want your perspective as well.
I think we have to be mindful of just for law students. First of all, it's an opportunity to connect with people that could be your future employers. But there is certainly that disconnect between being a lawyer and being a law student. And it's a little bit intimidating. The locations that a lot of these networking events are hosted can be a little overwhelming. And so a lot of times I find students just aren't even ready to go. And I think we could do a better job of both doing from a training perspective. I mean, even nowadays, and I'm almost 15 years I've been teaching, even just the things that students are wearing. I used to have, when I do final presentations, my students used to always put suits on. My students are now showing up to class in pajamas. And so from an educational standpoint, making sure that they have proper, attire when they're going and attending these networking events, understanding why, like why do people care? Because we do get a lot of pushback, and I think that's understandable. And I think those are important conversations. I think we on the other side have to be educating, decision-making attorneys of you want to be hiring the best people from a new generation, that we need more flexibility at the top as well to make those experiences more adaptable and changing them to align more of the expectations of the recruits that we're looking to bring in. Again, at the end of the day, like Cindy was just saying, we don't want that revolving door. We're looking at 1 to 2 years, where when I got out of law school, people were joining firms 5 to 10 years. I mean, people are not even thinking about what the hierarchy and how do I make partner. It's how do I get a job? What can I get out of this? Who's the next person that I'm going to be getting a position from? And so I think that the fear really comes from a lack of understanding, but also that at the top, we're still doing it the same and not adapting to what would be more comfortable and what people would find enjoyable, and then the overall value add on both sides at the end of the day.
Let me ask you real quick as a follow-up. So the idea of comfort, is there such a thing as, a line that could be crossed? Is there a too much on the comfort level? Like, where should firms be adapting on that front? How?
We're lawyers and we need to be professionals. And so not too much comfort. I think people forget when I tell them, it would be proper for you to dress up. Like, I don't have to do that. I said, well, if you go into court, I'll never forget when I clerked that my judge one day, there was an attorney who stood up without his jacket on. And he said, hi, welcome. Would you like to come dress for court? So you have to be, thoughtful of
Right.
what that's going to look like. When people say, oh, you need flexibility. Well, especially if you're going to litigation, there is flexibility that you can, look for, but in reality, this is a career and it's a professional career. So I think comfort in the sense of don't show up in your pajamas, be respectful, understand that you have selected a career as an attorney and what that means. At the same time, this does not mean that it needs to be the complete highbrowed, you are here to meet me and potentially get a job in the future. I also think we could do more social things. I think that we have a huge culture built around come over, drink too much, eat too much, and that's all it is. And how do you really get to know people? So I really like some of the newer networking models I've been seeing where people go and have experiences, or they're doing things outdoors, or, they're inviting people in to see speakers. And I think that that is a great different model as opposed to the old school kind of just eat and drink model, where you got to show up, you got to be on your best behavior, but you've got to be social. And, sometimes those don't all align, especially for our students, who are transitioning from a college into law school. And I think that having different experiences from a networking can also be helpful.
I love that idea of networking combined with speakers, because, and it can be on the scale of something like a tech show or larger event, but also on the sort of smaller, just if everyone is going and seeing a speaker together, it does give common ground to then go out in the hallways and you have something to talk about. It's like after a movie, right? Everyone can go and say, which performance did you like, right? So, Cynthia, compounding on some of the stuff that Sophia just said and your own perspectives about strategic networking, that fear and how it can be done better, what are your thoughts?
Well, one of the problems I think is you have to look at the personalities of individuals. most lawyers are not extroverts. They're not the ones that's going to go like, hey, let's get this party started type of thing, even in a professional setting. So you have to look at that coupled with this generation that is coming out of law school now. They have used technology to a great extent to communicate. So they're not used to that face to face. They will meet you online. They will DM you. See, I'm not even that cool yet, but I can see that guy.
That's all
They
right.
will DM you. They will text you. They will send you a chat. But if you want to, like, in the midst of it, pick up the phone and call them because you just want to clarify something or you just want to move through the conversation quickly, you get sent the voicemail and back to chatting. And so those are some of the things that we have to look at when we saying like, okay, now how are we going to get them engaged outside and involved in these events? And I believe, for example, going to an event like TechShow is, like you said, it's like the movie. You're going to go and you're going to see a speaker. It's going to be lively. It's going to be entertaining. And then you're going to walk out to the hallway and you're going to be bumping into other people because there's, it's a conference convention. So, the hallways aren't wide and spread out like we like because, we got a lot going on there. So they're going to bump into people. It's like, oh my gosh, did you just see that great speaker? What was your favorite? What did you learn? All those little conversations. So that can spark, I call it the organic type of networking. Whereas if you were put someone in a room and it's like, okay, here's food and drink table, drink, and you're standing there. Okay, should I eat? I'm kind of nervous. How much should I drink? Should I not drink? That just takes a lot of that social anxiety that comes with networking out of the picture.
So you struck on something there about networking and that anxiety that comes with it. One of the suggestions I always make to attorneys and honestly just to people in life is so many of us are introverts. Like whenever I talk to a room and I ask people to raise their hands, like, are you an introvert? It's like 75% of the hands go up. I'm like, hey, guess what? Your superpower is if you realize that everyone, quote unquote, everyone is an introvert, just walk up to them and talk to them, right? Just be the one person who's willing to walk up and say, whoa, what'd you think of that speaker, right? It doesn't have to be someone that you know. Your introduction is just to walk up, and I can promise you, even if they're sitting on their own, they will be happy that you walked up and started a conversation. They're just waiting to be invited to the dance, right? It's a bunch of wallflowers waiting to be invited to the dance. And I say this as someone who normally would identify as an introvert, but boy, oh boy, you go to an event and you just kind of start putting yourself out there. It's amazing how fast your career can grow if you are the one introvert who starts a conversation instead of waits for a conversation. Now, I'd like to dig into the tech side of TechShow. So Cynthia, as you all are putting this event together, I'm sure that you all see ahead or are looking ahead on trends, and I'm sure that AI is something that gets talked about, so we can go in that direction. But I want to have a more broad question for you to start with, which is, what are you all seeing over the next 1 to 3 years technologically that attorneys should be paying attention to?
I think, and not to bring the AI elephant into the room, but I think
that's fine. We can let it stomp all over us.
No. But I think one of the trends, and AI is a part of that, is productivity. Everyone wants their time back. They want, we came out of COVID, so we want to have our time to do other things, to be able to enjoy life. But by the same token, running a practice, especially if you're a solo or small firm, you do not have a lot of time. So you're going to have to look for technology tools that will give you back an hour, give you back a day if need be, just to simplify your life. So there's so many different tools, and that's one of the things that you can come to TechShow and learn about is all the different technology software and tools out there to simplify your practice. Some of them are AI generated. We don't need to go down that road, but like I said, it just helps you do the smallest of tasks. And I just learned about a new website, and it was like there's an AI for that. So if you have which is like there was an app for that, there's an AI for that, and it's very cool. Like if you want to, for example, let's say finance, want to streamline your finances. find software programs that will work with your practice group. And so you won't have to spend that time learning how to balance a checkbook, register, and all that nature. But you can go in and it's just plug and play, and you can just learn how to do it. And it would just give you back more time to do other things, such as networking, spending time with your family, whatever it may be, or growing your business. So many things eat up so much of our time. And I think one of the things is having that productivity level, elevated to that point where you can just like, hey, I got an extra 3 hours in my day. What am I going to
do? Yeah, and yes, you got to figure out what you're going to do with it, and hopefully, productively use it, or maybe you're going to spend it finding the next tool that will open up even more of your time. Now, Sophia, I'm also interested in your perspective, and actually, let me add some additional context here. One of the things I often talk about is the idea that software is not a strategy. Rather, strategy should inform the adoption of software. So in this space of looking at AI, of looking at some of these software programs, et cetera, how do you encourage attorneys to evaluate their needs and to start thinking both of the present but ahead of themselves on what they're going to need?
Yeah, so one of the things we're actually building in a tech show this year is to have a guide that you're going to have a workbook basically as you go through the experience, because a lot of times it's kind of overwhelming and people are coming at all different levels. I'm a skier, so I like to say it's everything from the bunny slopes into the black diamond.
There we
go.
Have
to account for, we have the people who have been tech show chairs. We have the people who are actually creating it. When you think about the vendor floor, we literally have all the people who are part of the new technological revolution in legal tech. And so we have to make sure we've got something for everyone. But even from a productivity standpoint, it can be incredibly overwhelming. So what our goal is to give you this format by which you can start doing just that, evaluating what your needs are. And so that's the beginning of it. People will get it in advance of Tech Show. So why are you coming? What is your purpose? Presumably people have a reason that they're investing in this experience. And so helping them to kind of cultivate the different pieces that they go through. Obviously, it's hard because you can't be in every place at the same time. We have 7 to 8 different programs taking place simultaneously. And so undoubtedly, you'll miss something that you were hoping to see, but we actually give the materials for every single program. So all attendees get the materials from every single speaker. At the end on Saturday, we're actually going to have a big workshop where we then go back. So you started thinking, what's my why? What are my goals? Making SMART goals from the very beginning to then show up, having this framework to start plugging in as you find things on the trade floor, being able to ask additional questions. And then at the end, kind of summing it up, because it can also be, wow, I just took 3 days off of work and I saw all these things. But then how are you going to implement them into practice? What are you going to buy? What do you need? And so our goal of building out this workbook to make sure that people are making the most of their conference is to really assist people in doing just that.
That's really exciting. The workbook approach, boy, oh boy, it's going to sound like we had talked about that ahead of time and that I was trying to cue you up with the software is not a strategy thing. No discussion ahead of time. That's just happy accident in there. So I'm excited to hear that for everyone who's going to attend, because buying the right software. Yeah, I have a lot of coaching clients who one of the issues that they deal with is they get really excited about a software as an idea, but it's not necessarily strategically what they should be doing in their practice. And then all of a sudden, they're coming to the end of the year and they use the software maybe at 5% of its capability. And now they've got another subscription, but it's not really doing all that they want. And it was just because they weren't necessarily thinking about it at the very beginning, what they wanted to use it for. So what I like to ask about now, and Cynthia, I'll go back to you first on this, is in the last year, since we're talking technology, I know everyone is always curious about like tech stacks and what you've done recently in adopting technology. I think what's cool here is, Cynthia, you have some big law perspective here, and Sophia with Trident Legal, smaller firm perspective on this. So I'd be curious first, Cynthia, what the firms that you've worked with have done technologically in the last year that have provided some really positive results.
Technologically? So, very good question. I don't want to overhype Tech Show, but really being educated in the technology out there is one of the things that a lot of the larger firms are doing. And I think anyone who's looking at technology, they need to educate themselves because there is so much. out there, and every day there's a new tech vendor coming out and telling you you need to add this to your stack and you need this to your stack. And like you said, you add all this to your stack and like, I only use 5% of that program. Did I really need that? Oh wait, the firm down the street had it. I definitely needed it,
That's
but
right.
I really didn't. So really educating yourself and what the practice groups and what the attorneys really need is really the key. That one of the groups within our firm, we have an acronym for every person in this firm, whatever your title is. So they call them K&I. So it's knowledge and innovation. So they really go to a lot of these tech shows and look at all the different technologies out there and look at the various practice groups within the firm and see how can this best fit their needs. And if it can't, scratch it off the list. Really doing a deep dive into understanding what is going to, once again, improve productivity, increase the bottom line, things of that nature, because we've all come to learn that, you can't just buy, a shiny new object just because your attorney friend down the street had that shiny new object. It gets very expensive. The competition can be high depending on the players. It's like, trying to keep up with your neighbor. You see them, cutting their grass and they put out holiday decorations and you're like, man, my grass needs cutting. I need to put out holiday decoration. And you weren't even thinking about it. You never do it until you see someone else. So, really taking that time out to educate yourself and figure out what is it you really need, because there is so much technology out there and a new technology company is starting as you speak. There are just so many of them.
That's very accurate. Sophia, within your firm over the last year, anything technologically that's been particularly beneficial to you?
I think the biggest thing on our end is automation. Whether we really tried to be building into client facing. So, you know what? Guess your client knows how to spell their name. They know their address. They know their email and phone number better than anyone else. They fill out forms for every single thing they do, whether it's signing up for cable, a medical form. Asking them to fill in that information is not a heavy lift. Making sure then the interconnectivity between those tech stacks, so you're not reinventing the wheel, reproducing anything that they've already created. So working on those integrations has been a big piece. Not to add a second answer to your very, very first question, but what they don't teach in law school is document automation. It drives me crazy. By the time I get primarily 3Ls and they don't even know how to, do something basic even within the existing constraints of Word. It is terrible. I talked just recently to our first year writing and research program, and I don't understand why we're not teaching people document automation early on. Why would you, I thought it was a hard thing just to scrub documents, and I just got a big firm document that they clearly weren't using a template because I just got all this great information about a settlement from someone else because they left all this information from a different case into the document they sent over. And, that should never be happening. But automation and integration has probably been the biggest thing that we've been working on this year. And honestly, we started the automation early on. I think one of my favorite, probably 10 years ago, TechShow programs was just how to use Word and mail merge back then. We were merging things to do like the original automation. And I learned that at TechShow. And so now I'm grateful that I don't have to do that. And there's so many plug and play things, We are as lawyers, people are like, oh, you've got to know code to do that. I said, you don't need to know code. You need to know if-then statements. And we've literally been educated for 3 years in if-then statements. If this is the person's title, this is where the title goes. If this person is going to be their own registered agent, then this information goes in. If not, then this information goes in. We know the structure. We can plug and play.
Yeah.
Yep. That if-then logic. I talk about it all the time in the marketing world as well. To be a good marketer, to be a good most anything, if you understand fundamental if-then logic and how to create if-then chains, it's just a huge benefit. Observing patterns is a huge benefit. So before I ask you all the final question of the show, and each of you will get that question, let's plug ABA Tech Show and how people can learn more about it and actually get signed up for it. So Sophia, if you want to talk a little bit about TechShow and how people sign up for it.
Yeah, very easy. We have the TechShow.com, www.techshow.com. Right from there, you can register. This year's TechShow is being held from February 14th to the 17th. It is at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago. This is an in-person show. First time attendees, welcome. We'll give you plenty of networking support. Make sure that you have everything you need to make it a valuable experience. There's also a lot of fun things that are built into it. So between, from a wellness perspective, there's a 5K, there's yoga, there's a really cool magician who's going to be coming and doing different pieces. All of the different trade vendors actually put on a lot of different fun experiences. There's a lot of hands-on stuff. So hopefully we will see a lot of you in person in Chicago for showing all the love on Valentine's Day to TechShow.
That's awesome. All right. So Cynthia, I'll start with you for the final question here. And it's simple little 3-parter. And Sophia, you'll have the opportunity to prepare your answer. So it's, what are you reading, watching, and listening to these days?
Okay. What am I, let's see, reading, watching, and listening to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll start backwards because what am
That's
I listening
okay.
to? What am I listening to? I'm big on Audible, so I won't say I'm reading it, so because I'm listening to it. So that's my thing now. Is like I listen to, and the latest one I'm listening to now is called The One. Can't think of the author right now, but basically it's one of the things that I like to read / listen to is things that's going to help me professionally and with my productivity and just kind of like make my life easy. So that's one thing that I'm listening to. Now watching, I started so many Netflix shows, and honestly, because I started like after I come from work and spin class and a few audibles in, I started around 11:30, 12 o'clock. So I'm not really watching anything. A lot of things are watching
That's fair.
me, so to say. Last Netflix is what was it? What Are We Running From? Yeah, it was
Okay.
So interesting. So I watched it, like I said, but I haven't finished the series. It's only 8 episodes. Haven't finished it, so it's kind of hard.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling very well. And then what are you reading these days?
Reading, like I said, the only thing that I do read in print now, because like I said, most of my books I get them in Audible, is the Harvard Business Review magazine. I read that religiously.
Awesome.
That is like my go-to. Whenever the new one comes, I am like, okay, take me back to my high school fashion days, like when I was pulling out the September issue of Vogue. Yes, okay, now I kind of put that aside, and now it's like, oh my gosh, look what they're talking about, leadership mindset and productivity and all these different things that are going on, not just in the legal, but in the business world, because I like to do the parallel between what's corporate doing opposed to what lawyers and law firms should be doing and how we can kind of get to that level. So that's what I'm reading.
Fantastic. HBR is great. All right, Sophia, your turn. What are you reading, watching, and listening to?
All right. My book club book that I just finished is Lady Justice. It's Dahlia Lithwick, and she's amazing. And if you're a lawyer, law student, person, American human, I think it's a must read. And actually, there is an Audible for that as well. So you can do a read or a listen. I'm very excited. Our book club's next week, and she'll be joining us. And I just think that she just did a masterful job of really encapsulating kind of the women's movement in the current political environment. So Lady Justice, great book, just finished it, loved what she did with that. Watching, I've got 2 little girls, so
Me too.
MasterChef has been a bit, we like cooking shows because I don't do cartoons and I can't do things with language that I'd love to be watching on Netflix. And so we go through a lot of different, so we've got our little chefs and we're watching MasterChef right now, and it's very competitive, who's going to win. So they've gotten involved, and that's kind of our evening after dinner in front of the fire. And then listening, I like to start off the day with NPR, and then I will just add to the Audible. I'm a big fan of Libby and Overdrive. So for people who are Audible listeners, you can use your public library, download the Libby app. And so a lot of times what I'm listening to is all the things that I'm looking forward to. I add. And so I kind of listen to things in order when they become available for free from the library, because that's kind of my approach. And then I actually just brought our girls in person to the library the other day to get their little kid library cards that thankfully they come in a little necklace. And so then I actually picked up another. I haven't been doing a lot of paper books. I do read a lot of books on, a tablet. And so I now have, it's a thriller called Jamaica Plain, which is the area of Boston that I live in. So I actually just started reading that, and we'll see if I can make it through a paper book because don't have a ton of time for that. Oh, and I'm a contract attorney, so I read thousands of pages of contracts all day, every day.
There we go. I love the shout out for Libby and public libraries. I'm there with my 9 and 6-year-old daughters at least once a week. And my biggest concern at this point is, are they going to read all of the library books and we're going to have to drive to a library that's farther away? So that's what we're going through right now.
I know the children's library are a little bit sparse these days. It's kind of sad. And the programming after COVID, at least here, used to be amazing things. And so luckily the city of Boston, we have a lot of libraries, but we have one right there. And so being able to, since we live in the city, we're going to have to do the same. And I have a 9 and a 5-year-old, so same age girls. And yes, we're about to have to move to the next one until their reading preferences up level again as well.
That's right. Well, Cynthia, Sophia, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate all your wisdom, insights, your practical tips from your different areas of the law, your different perspectives. And I'm excited for everyone who's going to be at TechShow this year and get a chance to network with other people and learn more about how to combine technology with the simple idea of helping people through the law and more productivity, everything that we've talked about. So Cynthia, Sophia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us, Charlie.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all in the next episode of They Don't Teach This in Law School.